Data from Stats SA shows that gambling has been on a major rise in recent financial years. From the 2022-23 to the 2023-24 financial years, gambling revenue has increased by 25.7%. This growth is astounding and is a hallmark of the post-COVID economy. Between the 2020-21 and 2023-24 financial years, there has been an eightfold increase in identified problem gamblers. I'm part of the group that advocates for minimal state intervention in markets. However, the data reflects that the gambling industry is not like any other. As Franz Grenier will highlight in the following video, the so-called successes of the gambling industry are a sign of deterioration of the larger society.
The thing is addictive. And these very clever algorithms are exploiting these desperately poor people. I don't think it works entirely to say free will was their problem, get on with it. No, I think the betting industries these are evil people. I don't know how they can possibly live with themselves to know what I mean, if you see some, as I have done, and people, if you see some of the people who've lost their money and how desperate they become. You know, I quoted some World Health Organization data, you'll be pleased to know, that was very good and showed the damage that betting does. It breaks up families. Kids lose their parents. It leads to alcohol and drug abuse. It leads to domestic violence.
Therefore, their increased revenue should be viewed with the same contempt as one would direct at the neighborhood pimp, whose existence depends on the continued vulnerability of a segment of society, in this case, the financially vulnerable. Exhibit A, Supergroup, the owners of the popular betting platform Betway, have stated that Africa and the Middle East form the largest share of their global revenue at 40%. This is concerning as both regions are still largely developing. Perhaps the data is skewed by population size, but when we take South Africa as a case study and examine the ratio of gambling revenue to GDP, we find that the harm is not exacerbated by population size.
South Africans turn to online betting. So you can bet on a sports competition or something else, or, you know. And this was marketed very heavily by large global betting companies. And South Africans fell for this at on an enormous scale. That's going, I mean, revenue taken by the betting companies is 75 billion a year. Turnover, 1.5 trillion rand. It's a fifth of GDP is being bet on bets. And the betting industry is marketing itself. You can't go anywhere without seeing it these days. Every billboard on the way to the airport is the riches you are sure to win if you start betting.
To defend the industry on the grounds of freedom shows a misunderstanding of the concept. Freedom does not include, to use Francis' analogy, a heroin smoker's choice to smoke. The sooner we understand freedom as the capacity to do what is good, the better choices we will make, because people are often chained to these habits or the hopes that they present. Their free will is not free at all. But is this to say that every vice or self-harming behavior should be unlawful? No, people curse, which is not to my taste, but I don't believe that justifies involving the law. However, I do think that there is a threshold at which legal intervention becomes necessary. For illustration, many in our country rely on taxpayer-funded social grants. When individuals, especially young people, squander these funds, they lessen their chances of crawling out of the system. This leads to an increase in long-term dependency on social grants, meaning that the issue becomes national rather than an isolated personal one. An article by Business Explainer captures my concern for the squandering of social grants in particular, stating, one particularly vulnerable cohort, those barely affording essentials, have witnessed a sharp escalation in distress, dedicating up to 40% of gross earnings monthly to bets. Certain segments channel half their South African Social Security Agency disbursements into gambling, potentially undermining the government's welfare framework for the impoverished. So imagine you receive 350 Rand per month, living under your parents' roof, spent that might buy you food for a couple of days, saved. It could be used as capital for a small business endeavor, but gambled on that Real Madrid versus Liverpool game, it could be doubled. These aren't the only options, but this is how many low-income young men in particularly approach this money. Therefore, the individual's free will definitely comes into play, but when we look at the consequences of such widespread availability of online gambling, it is the social climate and the taxpayers who bear the brunt of these disaffected young men. In light of time constraints, I quickly offer the following solution. Advertising cigarettes is illegal, and I believe that gambling industry should be subject to the same restriction. No more Betway Premiership, no more seeing someone win R500,000 when I switch on the TV. This, I believe, is the bare minimum. Franz argues for a complete ban, which I also support, but if we take an incremental approach to politics, advocating for this softer restriction is the most feasible solution. But whether Franz's approach or our approach is preferred, perhaps what we can agree upon is that gambling is better when it is not accessible or outside of the socially acceptable norms. When you had to go to the bad corner in town where people sometimes got stabbed, often fought, and all for 50 rand. The social taboo associated with that corner meant that danger remained reserved for a select few delinquent or addicted men. Therefore, it is the benefit of society to withdraw it from public normality as far as possible.